What's going on, Canes fans? Welcome to the Canecast. This is post FIU. I'm your host, Kyle Hynode. I'm by myself today as my co-host, Kevin, travels for Thanksgiving. I'm actually posting this Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving. We recorded a podcast on the bye week when we were supposed to be taking a break because we had some good news about recruiting and things going on. Then we got busy, didn't get around to posting it. Then the FIU game happened, and it just kind of killed any desire to post anything. Wasn't going to do a podcast this week, but after time of allowing myself to cool down and decompress and think about things and analyze situations and look at where Miami now stands, I thought maybe we'll put out a podcast that's not heated, isn't a lot of screaming and debating, and do something while I'm kind of cool, calm, and collected before the Duke game. I don't want to risk getting riled up again if that goes south. So this is going to be just me today, just going to give a few thoughts on Miami because people are losing their minds, and rightfully so. Let me begin before I even start the podcast by saying I completely agree with anyone who thinks that losing to FIU is a fireable offense. It's uncalled for, it's ridiculous, it's inexcusable. I agree with all of that. Even though I agree it's a fireable offense, I don't think Manny Diaz needs to be fired. Not in year one. I think because of how bad it is, losing to Georgia Tech, losing to FIU, which are both fireable offenses, now you've sped up the hot seat a little bit. I think you deserve another year. All coaches, there's no way I agree with firing a coach in 1 year. I just don't agree with it. But you roll into your second year, and you had such a disastrous first year, and that year begins to take the same form, then you can kind of be okay with hurrying it up the hot seat, firing a head coach in year two. For instance, if Manny Diaz had a 8-4 season, which would have been below average even in that, but you had beat Georgia Tech and FIU, I don't think that if you have a bad season next year, you maybe get fired next year. But definitely losing to FIU, Georgia Tech puts you on the hot seat. Manny's on the hot seat. Does not need to be fired this year. I'll talk about why. We'll talk about Blake James a little bit because there's a lot of topics people are mad in. They're mad at the higher-ups. They're mad at the AD. They're mad at the people who've hired these coaches and allowing Miami to be mediocre for the last 15 years. And I get it. I get the frustration. I get people wanting to win now. I understand. The first thing I want to address, though, before I even get into that, is the hilarious notion that the U is dead. If you didn't listen to the very first podcast that we put out when we started this, go back and listen to it again. It kind of discusses where Miami is. For fans to say the U is dead because of a loss to FIU, I get it. I get the frustration. I get that is a feeling. But it's just simply not true. You can't. Miami's mistake has been hiring the wrong coaches. And I'm not including Diaz in that yet. But it's been hiring the wrong coaches. And truthfully, I don't even think Rick was the wrong coach. But outside of him, it's just making mistakes the last few years. And the way college football has changed, the way the recruiting landscape has changed, everything's more difficult. Recruiting's more difficult. Winning is more difficult. Teams have better strength and conditioning programs. You're not just going to go get a bunch of talent, run a simplistic system, and run everybody over. It just doesn't work that way anymore. Old school coaches think it does, but it doesn't. Things have changed. Aside from hiring coaches, Miami's biggest mistake is always being a few years behind. When facilities became a big tool in recruiting, everyone updated the facilities. Who was last to do that? Miami. But they're doing it. And right now, for example, when you see schemes offensively change and modernize and teams adjust with it, you see the teams that adjust, those teams win. The teams that don't, they fall behind. What's Miami doing? Well, they're still being a few years behind, continuing to run this rigid pro-style system. Miami has been running the race a few steps behind, but that doesn't mean they're dead. They're making a decision to slow play this program and its goal to win at football. And that's what you get when you're at a private school. Sorry, it's true. Sure, Miami doesn't have the finances Texas and Alabama and Clemson and Georgia and LSU have. But if Miami wanted to compete and bring in a coach to allow this team to compete for championships and wanted to drop a big salary on that coach, they could do that. Absolutely. It's just a matter of doing it. And I do think Miami's taking those steps. If Miami's dead, then Texas is dead. Then USC is dead. I mean, you can't be hypocritical here. You know why Miami's not winning a national championship right now? Because championship caliber coaches don't grow on trees. Texas is the richest school in America, or one of the richest schools in America. And they are how many years removed from a national championship? The last one, they won in 2006. So Texas is 13 years removed. 13 years. They've got all the money and the resources to hire the best coaches available. Why haven't they won? Because coaches that win championships don't grow on trees. They're not a dime a dozen. It doesn't happen. They beat Georgia last year. They beat Oklahoma. You know what Texas's record is this year? 6-5. And I'm a Tom Herman fan and all that, but 6-5 is 6-5. They're not winning. In fact, they're the last team to even have an appearance in the entire Big 12. So it's not like they're playing in the SEC or some really tough conference. Yeah, there's some killers offensively that can upset you any given day, but the Big 12 is weak, and Texas still hasn't won anything. Not in 13 years. Their last appearance was 2009. So 10 years. It's been a decade since they've even appeared. They're the last team from the Big 12 to make it to a national championship. Oklahoma's got plenty of money. They've got the offensive guru. They still haven't won a championship since 2000. Georgia hasn't won since the 80s. Notre Dame hasn't won since the 80s. Or is it the 70s? I don't remember. I don't keep up with Notre Dame. It's been years. Because you don't just go... It doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world and our program doesn't invest in football like it's supposed to. That's why we're not winning. Yeah, you have a point, and that's true to an extent, but even the programs that are investing, every dime and every cent that they got, they still haven't won a championship. Some are competing, but they haven't won nothing. So to say Miami's dead, I think that there are schools that are more lucrative if you're a coach and you want to take on a big job than Miami, for sure. But if Miami was outside the top 25 and Miami was a Virginia, a Pittsburgh, a Georgia Tech, an Oklahoma State, a team like that, sure, I'd agree with you. Sure, I would agree. Okay, the U's dead in comparison to what it used to be, sure. But as long as Miami's located in South Florida in a recruiting hotbed, it'll always be relevant. It just needs a coach. Every time Miami has the slightest bit of success, recruits jump on board. They want to come to Miami. Because it's Miami. Not because of necessarily the history, but because it's Miami. It's not dead. It's a beautiful program. It's a beautiful campus. It's got lots to offer. It's a private school. And of course, they have a history of winning. He's not dead. Sure, if I'm a coach, right, and I'm not a Miami fan, I'm not a fan of anybody, sure, I go to Alabama first, a Georgia, an LSU, a Clemson. You know, maybe you make the argument about Florida State, Oklahoma, Texas, a Michigan. And then once you get away from those schools, those old school blue blood schools, I mean, Miami's, in my opinion, you're up there in the top 15 in most valuable schools to go to. I mean, what schools in the ACC that you know for sure can compete for championships? Clemson, Florida State, Miami. Big 12, Oklahoma, Texas. The Big 10, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. All right? Independent, Notre Dame. Pac-12, USC, maybe Oregon. That's only 11 teams that I named. You're going to try to convince me the U's dead? And if I'm putting all the best teams I can possibly think of without making it ridiculous, there's maybe 11 or 12 teams that maybe you want to go to over Miami? I mean, I'd take that. At worst, if Miami at worst was the 15th most appealing school to coach at, which I would definitely agree that it's top 15, that's still good. That still makes you a contender. So to say the U's dead is just absolutely ridiculous. I don't get it. Texas isn't winning. USC isn't winning. Michigan isn't winning. Michigan's had a few 10-win seasons. We just had one under Rick in 2017. If we play halfway decent football, we win 10 games. We won 9 games under the crappy coaches we had. We fire coaches after 8-win seasons. Al Golden, 8-win season. I understand that Clemson initiated that, but we didn't fire Al Golden or Randy Shannon after a 5-win season like Florida State or a 4-win season like Florida, right? And yet they're still relevant and they're still not dead, but we're dead and we're firing coaches after 8-win seasons. We want to fire Diaz, and this season's probably going to be 6-6 or 7-5. When a school like Texas has found their supposed savior in a head coach in his 3rd season, and he's still 6-6. But we're wanting to can our coach in his 1st season. That's going to be 6-6 or possibly 7-5. Teams like North Carolina and Louisville only winning 2 games. Miami still, in their worst years, are 500. The U's not dead. That's an overreaction by far to the fan base. By far. Not the richest school in America, not the most appealing school in America, and never was. It was just in a recruiting hotbed. That's it. So moving on from that, where does Miami go from here? Where do we go after a horrible FIU loss? Well, first, I'm not on board with the idea that this is all Blake James' fault. He's a moron. I'm just not on board with that. I do think that he's misstepped, made some decisions that he could have made, or he could have made better decisions, excuse me. But I think fans, when you overreact, and fans always do this, if fans would start looking at Miami football objectively and not being biased, first you'd stop calling me negative so much. Because you understand that I look at Miami completely unobjectively when I do this podcast. Now, when I tweet during the game, I'm tweeting from the heart. I'm hurt. I tweet passionately. I tweet just whatever's on my mind out of emotion without putting much thought into it. But when we do these podcasts, this is looking at it unobjectively. And I was a big advocate for trying to slow people's roll before this FIU game on talking about playing Bama, on talking about the Orange Bowl, because fans take success and they amplify it times a million. Like I said before, and they take failure and they amplify it by a million. Instead of just being objective, looking at what we got going that's good, looking at what we got that's going bad. The biggest thing that hurts fans is we don't have an answer. We don't have a reason to absolutely believe Diaz is going to work out, and that makes everyone panic, so we just want to find someone new. That's just not how it works. So we start with the head guy and Blake James, and look, Blake James, one, you want Miami to start putting money into the program. Well, Blake James has been a huge advocate for that. He's helped Miami invest. They went after Mark Richt, paid him well. He's helped get facilities built. He was a huge reason that we outbid Georgia for Dan Enos. Regardless of the results Dan Enos has brought forth, he's shown that, hey, we'll drop some money on a coordinator. He wants to win at Miami. It's not like I don't know any fans that are smart enough to know, yep, this is the exact AD that I want. This is who would do it better. This is how much they should pay him. I don't know anything about that. What I know is whoever my AD is, I want him to do what he needs to do to win. And what fans have to take into account when an AD hires a coach is 2 things. Is timing, right? And availability. The timing is where your program is at, knowing where it's at. How long has it been since you've competed for a championship? Because your hire kind of gets made based off of that. Like Florida State, for example. They're only a few years removed from the national championship under Jimbo Fisher. He left. They didn't want to rebuild. They wanted to reload because they had plenty of talent. So they just went after the first guy they found. They took a chance on an Oregon coach and Willie Taggart. And yeah, he had a shaky resume, but they'd seen some success. He's an offensive guy, and that's what they needed. So they felt that their program was bigger than their coach. And what I mean by that is they could win with whoever comes in as long as they put a decent scheme on the field. There's talent. They can recruit no matter what. They hired Willie Taggart. That's fallen through. Their finances are in shambles. Now they can't allow themselves, and they're already, they won in 2013, we're in 2019, so they're 6 years removed. They can't go another 4 to 6 years and get over a decade removed from a national championship. They need to find someone that can stabilize their program, get them back to at least 9-10 wins a year, get back into that recruiting base where they're recruiting top 15 teams every year. And then, if they need to, when they get their finances in order, they can go hire a really good coach. That's how timing and availability work. They've got to go, okay, where's our program now? Our program just needs stability. Trying to hit the home run national championship hire and pay him tons of money isn't going to work. So the timing, and then go look who's available. Who can we bring in? When they fired Al Golden, Blake James understood that Miami has been years removed from a national championship. We need some stability. We need recruiting. We need leadership, experience. And he hired Rick, and I thought it was a home run hire. It was a good hire. Now, sure, would I have preferred Dan Mullen in that case? Absolutely. But it was a weird time because we knew you take a chance on another coordinator, right? And it doesn't work out, you're in trouble. Now, of course, we would have loved for it to have been Dan Mullen, I think. I would have. But it wasn't. We hired Rick, and Rick got facilities built, got recruiting in, got Miami to a 10-win season, beat a top 5 team in Notre Dame, got Miami moving. And I don't think James foresaw, I don't think he saw it be the offensive play calling becoming an issue. And if it was an issue, I think he probably figured Rick wanted to win bad enough to adjust if he needed to. He wanted to bring that stability, that 10-win season every year, no matter what. Forget the big game. Forget the national championship right now. Let's just get back to being relevant. Let's just get back to 10 wins a year, New Year's 6 bowls, a couple top 10 classes. Then, if we need to, we either find the right coordinators or we find the right coach to find the right coordinators. I don't blame Blake James for hiring Mark Richt. I just don't. We needed that stability. Blake James, and here's another thing. So he hires Rick. He pushes for the program to put more money into the program, into the football program. And then when Mark Richt starts falling off, listen, I promise you, Mark Richt didn't retire because some fans tweeted at him about changing his offense. He didn't retire because of the fans. He retired because Blake James walked in his office and said, hey, some things got to change. Results got to happen now. And Mark Richt didn't want to hear it. Mark Richt dealt with that pressure at Georgia, and so he left. If Blake James walked into his office and said, I back you 100%, you do whatever you want. I don't care if you get an offensive coordinator. I don't care if you adjust. You do what you need to. I back you. He'd still be there. He'd still be coaching. He didn't leave because you tweeted at him. He didn't. I'm sure he sees it. I'm sure it sucks. But he didn't leave. Mark Richt didn't resign because of the fan base. The fan base put pressure on James. James reacted, put pressure on Rick. Rick left, period. James is doing his job. He demands change when success isn't in place. How can you hate Blake James? And then we get to Diaz. And people are mad for several different reasons. One, we're mad because Blake James didn't conduct an interview. Well, first of all, no one's going to, didn't conduct interviews, plural. He talked to Diaz, figured he wanted to keep the continuity with this team, this championship caliber defense. Could get Diaz for the cheap, which I don't think he was trying to be cheap. I think he thought, if we're going to take a chance on Diaz, let's not put ourselves in a financial bind. Smart, outside of you paid the buyout to Temple. And you hired Diaz. No one's going to knock out that interview better than Diaz. Mike Leach isn't going to come in there and win you over Manny Diaz. He's just not. Manny Diaz took a Miami defense with half the talent that these other schools like Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, half the talent those teams had, and put up just as good, if not better stats. In 2017, that defense was excellent. 2018, it was very good. Completely turned that defense around with a bunch of young, low-rated blue-chip kids bunch of 3-star kids, developed them, bunch of slow run-stopping linebackers that he started since freshman. Completely did a very good job in his defense. And already had a history of doing well as a defensive coordinator before that, outside of his stint with Texas, which was a dying program under Mack Brown anyway. He grew up a Miami fan. He grew up in Miami. He knows everything we know. He believes in everything we believe. Everything that we want Miami to do, he looked at Blake James and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. So if you're Blake James, if you're making the hire, you're going to hire the guy that's on the same page as you. We have a great defense. Now we just need to get a cutting-edge offense. Cool, I agree with that. Why change it up? Why mix it up? So the whole interview thing, I don't buy. I don't buy that James is an idiot for not pulling a Florida State and hiring another Oregon coach with a shaky resume and paying a $10 million buyout, and I'm talking about Cristobal, and putting us in a financial bind. Cristobal's record before Oregon, not that great. I don't care what you say. Was he coach at FIU or wherever? I don't care how you spin it. He was the head coach, and he didn't do very well. And then he went to Oregon, and Cristobal inherited a first-round draft pick quarterback in a weak conference with one of the better teams in that weak conference, and he won 9 games. So we're gonna pay his $10 million buyout, then pay him a massive salary because he did okay. Actually, he did not very well in his first coaching stint, and then he had 1 9-win season at Oregon? Because that's what Florida State did. Oh, you did all right at Oregon. You have a losing record, but you did okay at Oregon 1 year. You did okay 1 year in South Florida, so we're going to pay you all this money. And now you suck, and now we owe you lots of money. So Blake James is an idiot. No. He also looks at offenses are a dime a dozen. Lots of teams can find good offenses. That's why it's such an indictment that Miami doesn't have a good offense right now, because they're everywhere. There's good coordinators everywhere offensively. But defensively, there's not a bunch of dominant defensive teams. There's just not. Chip Kelly went to 2 national championships. He was 0 for 2. Why? Never had a defense. He had a Heisman caliber quarterback. No, not Heisman caliber. He had a Heisman winner at quarterback and a prolific West Coast offense. Didn't win a championship. Oklahoma has had the number 1 offense in the nation 5 years in a row. 2 Heisman quarterbacks, going on possibly their 3rd with Hurts. With Lincoln Riley. Hasn't even had an appearance in the national championship. You know why? No defense. Hasn't won a national championship since 2000. I mean, that's just facts. Ohio State, underachieving year after year. Now, they got a championship in 2014, but should have had way more, but didn't play defense. Penn State, no defense. Notre Dame, no defense. Oh, yeah, they win 10 games a year. Their talent gets them through. They beat the teams they should. They beat 1 or 2 good teams. They get to those top 5 programs, those big games. They lose because they don't have a defense. But Miami, playing the same type of schedule a Clemson would play, with half the talent, are putting up the same stats, getting the same results, on top of being screwed over by a Mark Richt offense. So you want to keep that intact. Manny Diaz was available for the cheap. You want to keep that intact. That's rare. Offenses you can find. Defense is much harder. Manny Diaz told you he'd go find a cutting-edge offensive coordinator. If he lied or he made a mistake, that's on him. That's not Blake James' fault. So I'm just not buying in on these people hating Blake James. Now, Blake James needs to go put pressure on Diaz to make changes and to fix some things, but I feel like Blake James wants to win. He's made sure the money's been there. He has pushed coaches to do better, and he hasn't put Miami in a financial bind. He valued defense over offense. That's why he didn't go hire a Leach over a Diaz. That makes sense to me. I don't get the hate for James. I get people's point. Should have interviewed some more people. Maybe should have picked Mullen. I'm with you. I am with you. But to say he has got no place being an AD, I'm just not so sure. Now, If Diaz doesn't work out and you go make another Diaz-type hire, okay, then maybe, yeah, I agree with you. But there's a lot of reasons that I could see made sense in hiring Diaz. And if right now Diaz had a little bit of luck with half of his games, we're not even having this discussion, even if we did lose to FIU. Right? We praised Mark Richt for that 10-11 win season in 2017 when several games went our way by pure absolute luck. One really good catch and a miracle throw that Rozier never does against Florida State, and we beat them last second. If that gets dropped or it's a bad throw, which it is 90% of the time, you lose to Florida State and Mark Richt starts out 0-2, and people are murmuring. But maybe we can blame that on concentration. Well, let's roll over to the very next week against Georgia Tech. Fourth quarter, a few seconds left, 4th down and long. You bomb it up to, not necessarily bomb it, you throw it into double coverage. Horrible throw, horrible decision to Langham again, because Rozier's not a good quarterback. Into double coverage, it gets batted. The ball bounces perfectly into Langham's arms as he falls backward into the ground. Pure, absolute luck. Good concentration, but luck. Things rolled Miami's way that year. Virginia Tech, 3 interceptions Rozier threw in the first half. But a few big turnovers due to Manny Diaz's defense and the ball bouncing his way on a few fumbles. Miami wins that game. Miami could have easily been 8-4, 9-3, no ACC championship. But the ball bounced our way. That's how football works sometimes. When you're not 4 deep in talent like Alabama and Clemson, these schools. Diaz has accomplished some big things with minimal talent. I mean, there's talent, but not like these other schools. Diaz is the reason we beat Florida State when we were down 27-7. Key turnovers, getting the ball back in scoring range. Big reason we beat Notre Dame. Big reason we beat Virginia Tech in 17. Diaz has done a lot of good for the program. I don't think that it was a horrible hire. I don't think James is a scumbag. Let's transition from James to Diaz. Right? So let's talk about, should Diaz deserve to keep his job? What are some things that he's done right? He came in, the punting situation was bad. He was innovative. He was the first coach to use the transfer portal in the way that he did. Not only that, when it comes to being innovative through the transfer portal, the turnover chain, which was tremendous in 17 and pretty good in 18. Doing some things that are creative. Immediately turned the worst punting situation in the country to one of the best by getting the transfers. Getting a guy in KJ Osborne that's helped us win some games. Pitt, for example, game-winning touchdown. Big time. Getting that competition, that quarterback competition, better. He's made good decisions. He's fixed some things. And then other problems have come, and he's a first-time head coach, and he's trying to figure it out. But he's making strides. Now, I'm with you guys on the bye weeks, coming out slow, but here's another thing that he's done, is this team has always been a team that quits. Under Shannon, when they lose to Florida State, the rest of the season goes down the drain. Golden, lose to Florida State, the season goes down the drain. Rick, played LSU, got hit in the mouth, gave up at halftime, rest of the season went down the drain, got ran over by a terrible Wisconsin team, and smashed. They're quitters. That's been eradicated. We've come back from 28 down, 17 down. We play to the fourth quarter every game. The problem has been fixed when it comes to giving up. What hasn't been fixed is showing up, right? So clearly these Diaz-led teams so far haven't shown up to games. They get down, and then they come back, and they prove that they're the better team. Every game, Miami's the better team. And sometimes they come back and win, and sometimes they don't. That's got to be fixed. But you're not going to know if he can fix it if you don't give him time to fix it. And I know people make the argument, and kind of back to James for a second, James is a bad AD because he hired a coach with no head coach experience. Big-time programs don't do that. He's a joke. Wrong. Ryan Day never had head coaching experience. He's coaching at Ohio State with success. More success than Urban Meyer had his last year. Dan Mullen took over at Mississippi State, never had head coaching experience. Jimbo Fisher took over at Florida State, never had head coaching experience. Kirby Smart took over at Georgia, never had head coaching experience. Dabo Swinney took over at Clemson, never had head coaching experience. Lincoln Riley took over at Oklahoma, never had head coaching experience. Big-time programs hired coordinators that were very successful coaching their side of the ball. And Blake James is no different. Manny Diaz had his defense in top category statistically year after year with half the talent. He did a tremendous job on top of being a good fit. We all thought Manny Diaz would be a good fit. Whether he ends up being a good fit or not, he looked the part, he spoke the part, and he did a good job on his side of the ball. He deserves a shot. Hiring a coach because he has some experience, we have to do that. If you don't do that, you're a bad AD. That's stupid. Scott Frost has plenty of success. He won 12 games, won a New Year's Six Bowl with UCF. He's in year 2 at Nebraska. I understand they suck, but they really suck even worse in his second year than they did the year he was fired. Chip Kelly's at UCLA in his second year. Can't even beat San Jose State in year 2. Where's that experience getting him? Tom Herman had head coaching experience. He's in year 3. They're 6-5 at Texas. Where's that experience doing for them? Meanwhile, Lincoln Riley with no experience took that team from 9-10 win team a year to a consistent 11-1 team and in the playoffs. And they're still giving him time to figure it out. Kirby Smart never had experience. Didn't have that great of a first year. Jimbo Fisher, he was a coach in waiting. He's still not a coach. He's a coordinator. Jimbo Fisher never coached. He took over Florida State. He got blown out by Oklahoma his first year. He didn't have a very good first year. He adjusted. He won a championship. Dabo Swinney, 3 years in, got 75 points put on him. Went 6-6. He sucked. Everybody wanted to fire him. He reevaluated himself and his coordinators, and now he's a winner because he was a good fit at Clemson. Coaches without head coaching experience take over all the time. I'm not going to blame Blake James and say he's bad because he hired one of the better defensive coordinators in the country. But Dan Mullen coached under Urban, Kirby under Saban. It's different. Right? Lincoln Riley under Bob Stoops. It's different. And Diaz was under Mark Richt, one of the most winningest coaches of all time. He was under Mac Brown, a national championship caliber coach. But he got fired. Okay, Venables, quote-unquote, left Oklahoma right before he was going to get fired because his defense was horrific. And everybody wants him to be a head coach when he's never been one. People are saying, we should have hired Venables as the head coach. Doesn't have experience. He just coaches a good defense. And he's been fired before also. You can't be hypocritical. You have to look into these things. I think he deserved a shot. We didn't put ourselves in a bad situation. What if you hired Cristobal? He comes to Miami, wins 9 games, wins 10 games, and then reverts right back, and he's getting beat by Dabo every year and getting upset here and there. And now you owe him all this money, and you can't do anything. Everybody thought Tom Herman, including me, Tom Herman was about to take Texas to the playoffs this year. They're 6-5. What if Urban Meyer takes over USC and dominates the Pac-12, and Mario Cristobal stays an 8-9 win a year coach? Because his first-round draft pick quarterback is now gone. You want to hire him because of this little tiny sample size. You haven't seen him have any sustained success. You got to give Diaz time. I'm with you guys that FIU is fireable. It's unfortunate. It's ridiculous. I hate it. Got to give him time. Diaz has done a lot of good things. He is changing some things. Another big reason I don't want to see Diaz go is, guys, we've lost to Georgia Tech and FIU, and we're still not losing a bunch of elite 2020 recruits, which at this time of year we normally do. 2021 doesn't bother me. I don't care. That's so far off. So when he's actually preaching, hey, we need kids that want to be here, it looks like he's telling the truth. He's getting linebackers that are more agile, more physical, more athletic. And not only that, they're guys that want to be here. They're not all decommitting. Romello Height just tweeted, I'm not going anywhere. One of the best kickers in the country we got committed to fix our kicking issue because Diaz is on top of it. I'm not going anywhere. Tyreek Austin Cave, I'm not going anywhere. Restrepo, I'm not going anywhere. These guys are bought in. Diaz is building something, in my opinion. Now, in my opinion, Diaz has got to change some things. He does have to reevaluate his staff, like these other coaches that I named, in order to win. We talk about Coach Ogeron. Yes, I get that when they lost to Troy was an 11-win team. They're really good. That's fantastic. LSU's still a top 10 team in talent at home against Troy. Spin it any way you want, you lost. Shouldn't have happened. He reevaluated himself. He canned a really good offensive coordinator in Matt Canada. He got another coordinator. Very similar to Dan Enos. They won 10 games. Wasn't good enough. Brought in Joe Brady to be the passing coordinator. Now they're one of the best teams in the country. Also, just so you know, they've totally betrayed their defensive identity. Their defense is horrific. So another reason people want to hire other coaches, I don't necessarily mind Diaz remaining here when he's done what he's done with our defense. I don't want to lose this defense. And yes, I get the defense has been worse this year. We'll talk about that. So with the coaching staffs, what does he need to change? Offensively, I've never been a fan of Enos. I've told you that. But I don't think Diaz is a horrible coach because he hired Enos. Because it kind of makes sense to me that if you're going and you're talking to coaches about coming to Miami, I believe in being multiple. I don't want my offense to be 95% shotgun. I like to see it be multiple. Kind of like a Florida offense. It's still a spread, but it's very multiple. When you look at the playbook Dan Enos has in front of him, and you see the formations he puts out there, he's got the plays. He just doesn't run it. When he's got to spread it out and he's got to open it up and be multiple, he does. I think Enos is a horrible game planner. I think he's too conservative, and I think he prefers pro-style tendencies. But I think he's got the playbook to be multiple and explosive. And so if you're Dan Enos, if you're Manny Diaz, you're looking for an offensive coordinator, and you go, oh, here's one with head coaching experience. I want that to help me because I never had it. I've never coached. So I need an assistant like that. Here's a guy that's very multiple, very complex in his offensive schemes. You look at his playbook. He's telling you to your face he's going to be explosive. He's going to be a spread coast. You believe him. You go back and you look at his stats with an Arkansas team in the toughest division of football. He puts up lots of points. And on top of that, he's a very good quarterback coach. I think it makes sense that you try Dan Enos out. You see what you can get out of him. But clearly, Dan Enos, not a very good game planner. Underestimates his opponent consistently. So if you retain Dan Enos, you got to bring in a co-OC. You got to bring in a guy that's going to help with the passing game. That's just my opinion. If you keep him. But if you don't, get rid of him. Dan Enos has got to go. Something's got to change offensively. We can't continue to be this bad offensively. You can't do it. So, bring in a co-OC or can Enos. Got to happen. If he hitches his wagon to Dan Enos, if Manny Diaz decides to stick with his entire staff and make zero changes, he's going to have to own that next year. And I'm not going to be there to defend him. Nobody's going to be there to defend him. And he can cost himself a job if that season goes sour. And to be honest, an 8-4 season is a failure next year. I don't care what the season is this year. You got to win 10 games next year. You got to. At least 9. At least. So if you're going to hit your wagon to these coaches and you're not going to make any changes, well, that's on you. And by comparing Manny Diaz to these assistants, I'm not trying to suggest, or by these other coaches that were were coordinators, I'm not trying to suggest that Manny Diaz is the next Dabo. He's the next Kirby. I understand situations are different. My point is, you can't just fire him in 1 year because all those other coaches were given a little bit of time. Some of them inherited much better deals, much more talent. Others were giving much more time. Diaz deserves a little bit of time. His coordinators may not, but he does. I'm not a fan of Blake Baker. I don't like his scheme. He takes too many chances. If Diaz isn't going to step in and fix that, then Diaz deserves to get fired. But he deserves a chance to adjust and fix it. I don't believe in people saying, fire Diaz now because he hired Enos. No, he hired Enos. If it doesn't work, let him fix it. Then if he doesn't, and the results continue to be negative, then you fire Diaz. But I think he deserves more time, despite how bad the FIU loss was. I think that Miami still has plenty of time to correct things. You bring in this class, maybe you win your bowl game, you beat Duke, you win your bowl game. That's 8 wins on the year. Not awful. You'd be 8-5. Bring in a pretty decent class. Have a good season next year. If you don't, then we evaluate whether or not you need to be at Miami. But to hate these guys without looking at maybe the reasons why they made the decisions they made between Diaz and James, I think you need to do that to kind of understand the thought process. Not to hate on these guys so much. Things need to be fixed. I hope they will be fixed. I hope Blake Baker... Look, we talked about what we want versus what's probably going to happen. I would love to see Blake Baker gone. I would love to see Dan Enos gone. I don't think either one of them will be gone. Blake Baker just had a kid. Dan Enos walked up in the interview yesterday or Monday, all smiles, defending his game plan. If Manny Diaz walked in and told him his game plan was crap, he wouldn't have walked in there defending it. So I'm a little concerned that everybody thinks the game plan's perfect. Worries me a little bit. I don't think Dan Enos is going to go anywhere. I don't think Blake Baker is going to go anywhere. But we'll see. Maybe Manny Diaz realizes there's blood in the water and the fans are upset and he needs to make a change. And maybe he sacrifices Butch Berry, The fans want blood. So maybe he fires a position coach. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. Something needs to be adjusted. I think he deserves a chance to do just that before you fire him. Miami isn't this program that's way behind the 8 ball compared to these other programs in terms of money. They have it. In terms of hiring a coach without experience, so many programs do that. In terms of taking football seriously, I don't believe Miami's dead. I don't believe when you see so many other programs have similar issues. Again, using Texas and USC, for example. And then you got some schools that got to that peak, right, to that 10-win peak, where they're not going to really win a national championship, but they're going to be up there recruiting well and winning lots of games every year. And I know that's where Miami fans at least want to be. That needs to be the standard that, hey, in our worst year, we still need to be winning 10 games going to a New Year's Six Bowl. I get that. Like the Michigans, the Penn States, the Oregons. I get that. The teams that are just kind of just there every year. 10 wins a year, at least minimum. And from there, try to make changes to win a championship. But schools have issues. It happens. I'm still a fan of Diaz. I just want to see if he adjusts. I think he was a good pick, a good hire, and I hope it works out. Let's see how the season finishes. Let's see if they adjust. He's fixed some things. Let's see. He's fixed the giving up. Let's see if he fixed the showing up. Let's see if he fixed his coaching staff. Let's see if he adjusts. I'm going to end it at that, guys. If you listen all the way through, thank you for listening to me ramble. I get everyone's frustration. I understand. I'm not happy. And I'm not going to cry if they decided to can Diaz today. But it's not going to happen. So give him time to fix, to adjust. I'm pretty sure I kept saying affix. Give him time to fix and adjust things on his roster and his coaching staff. And let's see where it goes from there. Every school in America's done it. Miami's no different. Don't trash your program. Don't stop being a fan because you've got a bad loss. It does suck. It can be fixed. And it can be fixed quickly. Manny Diaz can fix this quickly. He can adjust his staff. He can land this recruiting class. He can come into next year hot, win a bunch of games, and then we're all going to be happy. Then all of a sudden Blake James is going to be a genius and Manny Diaz is going to be the answer. It always comes down to winning. Look at the circumstances. Be objective. Don't get your hopes too high. This really hurt because some of you fans catch your hopes way too high. And you shouldn't have. Now, you should have never lost to FIU, but you mix a loss to FIU with your expectation being, hey, we can compete with Bama. You get the kind of disaster that you see on Twitter right now, where it's blowing up. Again, thank you guys for listening. I'm going to drop this today, the day before Thanksgiving. If you enjoy it, give us a comment on iTunes. Give us a 5-star rating if you don't mind. Let us know on Twitter. at Canecast, Canecast. Let us know what you think. Show us some love, guys. We appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next week. If you like the pod, you listen to us on iTunes, give us a rating. Give us a 5-star rating, preferably. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you think about the show. And tell your friends about it. Follow us on Twitter at Canecast, Canecast. And tell your friends about it, guys. Thank you again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.